Okay, boys and girls, tomorrow we're going to be discussing the differences between bar graphs and histograms. And hopefully for most of you this is a review. If not, that's okay. So what is a bar graph? Bar graphs are graphs that use bars to show comparisons between data. Okay, so here we have two bar graphs. One is vertical and one is horizontal. The one on the left is vertical. The bars are pointing to north, upwards, vertical. And the one on the right, the bars are pointing east and west. In both graphs are displaying the same information, right? They're comparing the reading habits of three students, Nancy, Juan, and Marie. What I do want you to pay attention to is that there are spaces between the bars. So there you can look, if you look, each bar is giving you information about a particular person. The first one is Nancy, Juan, and Marie, then Juan, then Marie. And there are gaps between the bars because the information is not continuous, it's discrete. They're different categories, right? And so their spaces are gaps between the bars. And that's going to be really significant when we start discussing histograms. Okay, now we have a histogram. A histogram is very similar to a bar graph in that, of course, it uses bars, it represents information visually. There's a y-axis, right? We can see the y-axis here, the number of students. There's an x-axis. The difference is that there are no spaces between or gaps between the bars. And the reason for that lies in the type of information that's being displayed. In the previous graph, we saw that we were talking about the reading habits of three students. And so Nancy, Juan, and Marie are three different people. So we were just talking about how many books each student had read. Here we're comparing the television watching habits of different students. That's continuous information. It's telling us that in a particular class, the number of students that watch between 1 to 3 hours is what? What is that? 14? Maybe 14, 15 students. It's telling us the number of students that watch between 4 to 6 hours of television, right? That's over 16 students, maybe 17. And it's telling us the number of students that watch between 7 and 9 hours of television. That information, the number of hours, right, that is continuous information. Because in theory, we could have somebody who watches no television. That's a possibility. And then we can have somebody watching, one student can watch 1 hour, one student can watch 3 hours, one student can watch 7 hours, one student can watch 9 hours. So that's continuous information. There's a range. What's important when you're considering your histograms, or creating your histograms rather, is to ensure that your numbers are arranged into intervals and that no number is left out. So if we look at this here, any value between 1 and 3 will fall within the first bar, in the first interval. And then 4 to 6 will fall in the second. And the third interval is between 7 to 9. Now, hopefully, this occurs to you where you start thinking, well, Ms. Bab, what happens if I don't have an integer? What happens if it's not a whole number? What happens if, there's this one kid in the class who watches 3.3 hours of television? Where would he lie? Okay, so that's one of the conversations that we're going to be continuing tomorrow, but I want you to think about that. Okay? All right. See you tomorrow.